Varys's vision blurred with tears as she watched the human medic struggle to save her friend Zaxxon's life. The sterile hospital room on the Prometheus space station felt cold, clinical, devoid of hope. Plasma burns ravaged Zaxxon's body, the price he paid for shielding Varys from the Krelith warrior's savage attack. She replayed the moment in her mind, Zaxxon leaping in front of the searing blast, his agonized scream ripping through the chaos of battle. Now he laid unconscious, barely clinging to life. The human medic, Craig, carefully cleaned and dressed Zaxxon's wounds with a gentle touch that contradicted everything Varys had heard about his species. Rumors painted humans as brutal, callous, inferior to the mighty Ventaxian race. But the genuine compassion in Craig's eyes as he focused on his alien patient shattered those preconceptions. He glanced up, meeting Varys's gaze. "I know our species are different, but I'll do everything I can to save him. You have my word." Losing him would extinguish that shared hope forever. As Craig worked tirelessly to stabilize Zaxxon, he asked Varys about their culture, their biology. He wanted to understand how to best treat his Ventaxian patient. Nobody had ever shown such interest in her people before, such respect. Varys found herself opening up, sharing stories of her life back on Ventaxia, her aspirations, her fears. She talked to keep the suffocating silence at bay, to keep her mind from dwelling on the possibility that Zaxxon might never wake up. But she could see the grim reality reflected in Craig's eyes, even as he fought to hide it. Zaxxon's condition was critical, his chances slim. Only a miracle or the extraordinary capabilities of human medicine could pull him back from the brink now. The fate of Varys's dearest friend rested in the hands of an alien doctor she'd just met. A doctor who might be her people's last hope. As the days turned into weeks, Craig remained a constant presence at Zaxxon's bedside. Varys watched in fascination as the human medic tended to her friend with a level of care and dedication she had never witnessed before. Craig seemed to anticipate Zaxxon's every need, adjusting his treatment and monitoring his vital signs with a keen eye and steady hand. One afternoon, as Craig carefully administered a dose of regenerative nanites to Zaxxon's wounds, Varys couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. "I don't understand," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the tiny glowing machines as they worked to knit Zaxxon's flesh back together. "Why are you doing all of this? Why would you share such advanced technology with a mere Ventaxian soldier?" Craig looked up from his work, meeting Varys's eyes with a gentle smile. "Because all life is precious," he said simply. "It doesn't matter what species you are or what rank you hold. Every being deserves compassion and care, especially in their time of need." Varys felt a lump form in her throat at the sincerity in Craig's words. She had never encountered such a selfless philosophy before, especially not from a member of a species rumored to be so brutal and uncaring. As if sensing her thoughts, Craig's expression grew somber. "I know what it's like to lose comrades in battle," he confessed, his eyes distant with memory. "The guilt of not being able to save them. It stays with you. Helping Zaxxon in a way, it's like honoring their memory, giving someone else the chance they never had." Varys reached out, tentatively placing a hand on Craig's arm in a gesture of comfort. She was starting to see the human in a new light, not as an inferior being or a potential enemy, but as a kindred spirit who understood the weight of loss and the value of life. Late one evening, as Craig was checking Zaxxon's vital signs, Varys gathered the courage to ask the question that had been gnawing at her since she first heard the rumors of human cruelty in war. "Is it true?" she asked hesitantly. "What they say about your kind, that you show no mercy on the battlefield?" Craig sighed heavily, his shoulders sagging under the weight of the question. "Like any species, we have our flaws," he admitted. "There are individuals who commit atrocities, who let hatred and fear guide their actions. But most of us, we strive to be better, to uphold the values of compassion and mercy even in the darkest of times." He turned to face Varys, his eyes burning with conviction. "In human medicine, we have a concept called medical neutrality. It means that we treat all wounded equally, regardless of whether they're friend or foe. When someone is lying there, bleeding and broken, all that matters is saving their life, not what uniform they wear or what side they fight for. Varys listened in rapt attention, her mind struggling to comprehend a philosophy so foreign to her own people's way of thinking. Ventaxians were taught to conquer, to subjugate, to show no mercy to their enemies. But here was a human, speaking of compassion and equality, as if they were the most natural things in the world. Zaxxon blinked slowly, his vision blurry as he regained consciousness. The sterile white walls and unfamiliar medical equipment surrounding him were disorienting, and for a moment he felt a surge of panic. Where was he? What had happened? "Zaxxon, it's okay, you're safe," a familiar voice soothed. Varys's face came into focus, her eyes filled with relief and concern. "Varys," Zaxxon croaked, his throat dry and scratchy. "Where am I? What is this place?" "You're in a human medical facility," Varys explained gently. "You were badly injured in the battle with the Krillath. Craig, the human medic, has been working tirelessly to save your life." Zaxxon frowned, his mind still clouded by the prejudices against humans that were so deeply ingrained in Ventaxian society. "A human? Why would they help me?" As if on cue, Craig entered the room, a warm smile on his face. "Zaxxon, it's good to see you awake. How are you feeling?" Zaxxon eyed the human warily, unsure how to respond. Craig seemed to sense his discomfort and approached slowly, his hands held up in a gesture of peace. "I know this must be confusing for you," Craig said softly, "but please know that you're safe here. My only concern is ensuring your recovery." Zaxxon nodded hesitantly, still not entirely convinced, but willing to give the human a chance. As Craig began to check his vital signs and adjust his medication, Zaxxon couldn't help but marvel at the advanced technology and skilled precision of his movements. "I have to admit," Zaxxon said grudgingly, "your medical skills are impressive. I never would have expected such expertise from a human." Craig chuckled, not taking offense at the backhanded compliment. "We humans are full of surprises," he said lightly, "but enough about me. Tell me more about yourself, Zaxxon. I've always been fascinated by Ventaxian warrior culture." Zaxxon hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should share such information with an outsider, but as he looked into Craig's eyes, he saw only genuine interest and respect. Slowly he began to share stories of his training, the grueling physical and mental challenges he had endured to become a member of the Ventaxian elite guard. Craig listened intently, asking questions and showing a depth of understanding that surprised Zaxxon. As the conversation flowed, Zaxxon found himself growing more and more curious about human military practices. "What about your medics?" he asked hesitantly. "Do they also serve in combat roles?" Zaxxon's eyes widened in disbelief. "You mean they would risk their own lives to treat enemy soldiers?" "Yes," Craig said simply. "It's a core principle of human military medicine. We believe that all life is precious, and that everyone deserves compassion and care, even in the midst of war." Zaxxon was stunned. He had never heard of such a concept before, and the idea of risking one's life for an enemy went against everything he had been taught as a Ventaxian warrior. But as he looked at Craig, he couldn't help but marvel at the bravery and selflessness it must require to uphold such a principle. As the conversation deepened, Zaxxon found himself opening up about the incident that had landed him in Craig's care. He looked away, shame coloring his voice as he spoke. "I failed in my duty," he said quietly. "I was supposed to protect Varys, but instead I ended up injured and unable to fight." Craig placed a hand on Zaxxon's shoulder, his expression serious. "Zaxxon, listen to me. What you did was not a failure. It was an act of heroism. You sacrificed yourself to save your friend, and that is a testament to your character and your loyalty." Zaxxon looked up, surprised by the intensity of Craig's words. He had never been praised in such a way before, especially not by a member of another species. "You really believe that?" he asked hesitantly. "I do," Craig said firmly, "and I hope that in time you'll come to believe it too." As Zaxxon lay back against the pillows, his mind reeling from the conversation, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of something he had never experienced before when thinking about humans: respect. As the days passed, Zaxxon's strength slowly returned under Craig's attentive care. The human medic guided him through a series of physical therapy exercises, carefully monitoring his progress and adjusting the regimen as needed. At first, Zaxxon found the process frustrating. His muscles, weakened from the prolonged bed rest, protested every movement. He gritted his teeth, his pride stinging as he struggled with even the simplest tasks. But Craig remained patient and encouraging, never letting Zaxxon give in to despair. He shared stories of human soldiers who had overcome similar injuries, who had fought their way back from the brink and gone on to lead fulfilling lives. One day, Craig introduced Zaxxon to a human veteran named Marcus. The man had lost his leg in combat, yet he greeted Zaxxon with a warm smile and a firm handshake. As they talked, Zaxxon learned that Marcus now competed in something called the Paralympic Games, a sporting event for individuals with physical disabilities. Zaxxon was amazed by Marcus's resilience and determination. Despite his injury, the human refused to let it define him. He had adapted, finding new ways to push his body to its limits. As the two warriors bonded over their shared experiences, Marcus began teaching Zaxxon techniques for working with his injuries. He showed him how to modify his movements, how to use his remaining strength to compensate for what he had lost. In return, Zaxxon shared some of the meditation practices he had learned as a Ventaxian soldier. He taught Marcus how to quiet his mind, how to focus his breathing to manage the phantom pains that sometimes haunted his missing limb. Varys watched these interactions with a growing sense of admiration. She had always been taught that humans were weak, that they lacked the strength and discipline of the Ventaxian race. But seeing the bond that had formed between Zaxxon and Marcus, the way they supported and learned from each other, she began to realize just how wrong those beliefs had been. One afternoon, as Craig was guiding Zaxxon through a particularly challenging set of exercises, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the medical facility. Red lights flashed, and a voice crackled over the intercom, announcing that a Krillath raiding party had breached the space station's defenses. Craig froze, his face torn between his duty to his patients and his desire to help the wounded that were undoubtedly pouring into the medical bay. Zaxxon, seeing the conflict in the human's eyes, struggled to sit up straighter. "Go," he said, his voice rough but firm. "A true warrior never turns his back on those in need." Craig hesitated, glancing at Varys. She nodded, moving to Zaxxon's side. "I'll stay with him," she promised. "We'll continue his exercises." With a grateful look, Craig hurried from the room, the sounds of chaos growing louder beyond the door. Zaxxon and Varys exchanged a glance, a newfound respect for the human medic shining in their eyes. "He truly is remarkable," Varys murmured, watching as Craig's figure disappeared down the hallway. "To have such dedication, such selflessness." Zaxxon nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips despite the gravity of the situation. "Perhaps there is more to humans than either of us ever realized." Hours later, Craig stumbled back into Zaxxon's room, his face haggard and his medical uniform stained with splatters of crimson, emerald, and deep violet. The blood of humans, Ventaxians and Krillath, mingling together in a grim tapestry. Varys and Zaxxon stared in shock at his appearance, concern etched onto their faces. "Craig, are you all right?" Varys asked, rising from her seat beside Zaxxon's bed. "You look—" "I'm fine," Craig waved off her concern, mustering a tired smile. "It was a rough shift, but I'm just glad I was able to help." He moved to the sink, methodically scrubbing the blood from his hands and arms. As he cleaned himself up, he began to recount the incredible scenes of bravery and selflessness he had witnessed in the chaos of the attack. "There was this human soldier," he said, his voice filled with awe. "He lost an arm in the initial blast, but he still managed to carry an injured Krillath to safety. And then there was a Ventaxian medic who threw herself over a human child to shield her from falling debris. She took the brunt of the impact herself." Varys and Zaxxon listened in stunned silence, their preconceptions about other species crumbling in the face of such acts of heroism. Craig turned to face them, his eyes shining with conviction. "You see, that's the thing," he said. "These acts of courage, of compassion, they're not unique to any one race. It's a testament to the strength of spirit that lies within all of us, regardless of what we look like or where we come from." As the conversation turned to the ongoing war with the Krillath, Craig leaned forward, his voice earnest. "I know it seems impossible, but I truly believe that peace is achievable," he said. "But it's going to require us to look past our differences, to find common ground." He shared a story then of a human diplomat who had managed to negotiate a ceasefire with a notorious Krillath warlord. They found out they both had a love for poetry, of all things. Craig chuckled. And that small connection, that shared appreciation, it opened the door to further dialogue, to understanding. Varys and Zaxxon exchanged skeptical glances, the weight of their own experiences in the war heavy on their shoulders. But as they looked at Craig, at the unwavering hope and determination in his eyes, they couldn't help but feel a flicker of something long forgotten stirring within them, a sense of possibility, a glimmer of a path beyond the endless cycle of violence and retribution. "Maybe," Varys began, her voice hesitant, "maybe there is another way, a way forward that we just haven't been able to see before." Craig smiled, reaching out to lay a hand on each of their shoulders. In that moment, the barriers of species and allegiance seemed to melt away, leaving only a shared sense of purpose, of potential. "It won't be easy," he said, his grip tightening, "but nothing worth fighting forever is, and I believe with every fiber of my being that this fight, the fight for understanding, for peace, is one that we cannot afford to lose." As Zaxxon's strength returned, and his wounds healed under Craig's attentive care, the human medic began to invite him and Varys to explore the human section of the Prometheus space station. Eager to learn more about the species that had shown them such compassion, they accepted. Their first stop was the mess hall, where they marveled at the array of exotic dishes from Earth's diverse cultures. Vibrant curries, aromatic stews, and spiced delicacies filled the air with tantalizing scents. "I never imagined human cuisine could be so flavorful," Varys admitted, as she sampled a bite of a rich, savory dish called ratatouille. "On Ventaxia, food is seen as mere fuel for the body, but this is an experience." Craig smiled, nodding in understanding. "Food has always been a way for humans to connect, to share our cultures and traditions. Some of the most meaningful diplomatic breakthroughs in our history have happened over shared meals." He recounted a story of a banquet he had attended, where tensions had been running high between human and Ventaxian delegates. But when the chefs, one human and one Ventaxian, collaborated on a fusion dish that blended elements of both cuisines, the delighted reactions from both sides had helped to ease the strain and open the door to more productive conversations. As they continued their tour, Varys found herself drawn to the station's art gallery. Paintings, sculptures, and installations from across human history and the reaches of space filled the halls, each piece telling a unique story. "Art has been a crucial part of human culture for as long as we can remember," Craig explained as they wandered among the works. "It's a way for us to express ideas, to challenge the status quo, to process our experiences and emotions." He paused before a striking painting, a swirl of colors and textures that seemed to dance across the canvas. The artist who created this piece lost his sight in a battle with the Krillath, but he didn't let that stop him. He learned to paint using his other senses, pouring his pain and his hope into his work. Varys gazed at the painting, her throat tightening with emotion. The artist's story resonated with her, echoing Zaxxon's own journey of resilience in the face of adversity. As they left the gallery, lost in thought, a sudden burst of laughter caught their attention. A group of human children were playing a lively ball game in the corridor, their faces alight with joy. Craig grinned, turning to Zaxxon and Varys. "Want to join in? The rules are simple, and it's a great way to blow off some steam." Zaxxon hesitated, his warrior's pride warring with the sudden, unexpected desire to participate. But as he watched the children's carefree play, he felt a pang of longing for the innocence and simplicity of youth, so often lost in the chaos of war. With a tentative smile, he nodded. "Why not? It's been a long time since I've played any kind of game." The children welcomed them eagerly, quickly explaining the rules and dividing into teams. As the game began, Zaxxon found himself swept up in the friendly competition, his worries momentarily forgotten in the thrill of the chase. Varys watched from the sidelines, a soft smile playing on her lips. Seeing Zaxxon like this, laughing and playful, filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. And as she observed the easy camaraderie between the human children and the Ventaxian warrior, she couldn't help but reflect on the power of such simple, joyful interactions to break down barriers and foster understanding between species. Perhaps, she mused, this was the key to the peace they so desperately sought. Not grand political gestures or sweeping military campaigns, but the small, everyday moments of connection and shared humanity that had the power to change hearts and minds. As the game ended, and the children dispersed with cheerful waves and promises of future rematches, Varys caught Craig's eye. In his gaze, she saw the same flicker of hope and determination that had taken root in her own heart. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing us a different side of your people, for giving us a glimpse of what could be if we're willing to open our minds and our hearts." With renewed purpose, they returned to the medical facility, their steps a little lighter, their resolve a little stronger. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Varys and Zaxxon dared to believe that a different path was possible. And as they looked to Craig, to the shining example of human kindness and resilience, they knew they wouldn't have to walk that path alone. As the station's artificial day cycle began to wind down, Craig approached Varys and Zaxxon with a twinkle in his eye. "I have something special planned for tonight," he said, his voice brimming with excitement. "In human culture, we have a tradition of stargazing, of looking up at the night sky and marveling at the wonders of the universe. I thought you might like to join me." Intrigued, Varys and Zaxxon followed Craig to the observation deck, a vast circular room with a transparent dome that offered a breathtaking view of the cosmos. In the center of the room stood a large, sleek telescope, its polished surface reflecting the distant stars. Craig gestured for them to approach, his face lit with enthusiasm. "This is one of the most advanced telescopes in the galaxy," he explained, adjusting the settings with practiced ease. "It allows us to see far beyond what the naked eye can perceive, to glimpse the incredible beauty and complexity of the universe." As Varys stepped up to the eyepiece, her breath caught in her throat. Through the lens she saw a swirling galaxy, its arms spiraling out into the void like a cosmic pinwheel. Stars glittered like diamonds against the inky blackness, their colors ranging from brilliant blue to deep red. "It's stunning," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I had no idea the universe could be so vast, so beautiful." Craig smiled, nodding in understanding. "That's the thing about space," he said, his tone reverent. "It has a way of putting things in perspective, of reminding us of our place in the grand scheme of things." As Zaxxon took his turn at the telescope, Craig began to share stories of human space exploration, his eyes shining with pride and wonder. He told them about the Voyager missions, how humans had sent these tiny, intrepid probes into the depths of space, carrying with them a message of peace and hope for any intelligent life that might find them. The Voyager probes each carried a golden record, Craig explained, his voice filled with emotion. It was a disk that contained sounds and images from Earth, a snapshot of our planet's culture and history. It had everything from music and wildlife sounds to greetings in different languages and photographs of our cities and landscapes. Varys was particularly struck by this idea, the notion of encapsulating an entire species' essence on a single, fragile disk. "What an incredible gesture," she murmured, her mind reeling with the implications. "To send out a piece of yourselves into the unknown, not knowing if anyone would ever find it. It's such a powerful symbol of your curiosity, your desire to connect with others." Craig nodded, his expression thoughtful. For humans, space exploration has always been about more than just scientific discovery or technological advancement. It's a reflection of our deepest yearnings, our need to reach out and find our place in the universe. We look up at the stars and we see possibility, potential. We see a future where we're not alone, where we're part of something greater than ourselves. As they sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, Varys and Zaxxon found themselves reflecting on their own species' relationship with the cosmos. They shared stories of Ventaxian constellations and the myths that surrounded them, of the great explorers who had first ventured beyond their planet's atmosphere. In this moment of quiet contemplation, the barriers between their cultures seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense of shared wonder and purpose. They were all children of the stars, each species grappling with the same fundamental questions of existence and meaning. "You know," Zaxxon said softly, his gaze fixed on a distant nebula, "I never thought I would find myself here sharing a moment like this with a human. But now, looking out at the vastness of space, our differences seem so small, so insignificant in the face of something so much bigger than ourselves." As their time on the Prometheus drew to a close, Varys and Zaxxon found themselves torn between excitement and sadness. They were eager to return to Ventaxia, to share their newfound understanding of humanity with their fellow soldiers and leaders. But they also felt a deep sense of connection to Craig and the other humans who had shown them such kindness and compassion during their stay. On their final day, Craig invited them to the station's arboretum, a lush garden filled with plants from Earth and beyond. As they walked among the vibrant blooms and towering trees, Varys marveled at the diversity of life represented in this small, artificial ecosystem. "I never imagined a place like this could exist on a space station," she murmured, running her fingers over the delicate petals of a Ventaxian moonflower. "It's like a little piece of home." As they wandered deeper into the arboretum, Craig began to share a story about a human botanist named Amelia. During a Krillath attack on a Ventaxian colony, Amelia had risked her own life to save a rare flowering tree that held great cultural significance to the Ventaxian people. "She didn't hesitate," Craig recounted, his voice filled with admiration. "She threw herself over the tree, shielding it from the blast with her own body. When the dust settled, she was badly injured, but the tree was unharmed." Varys felt a lump form in her throat, touched by this act of selfless compassion. "I had no idea," she whispered. "All this time I thought humans were just violent, unpredictable. But now I see that you're so much more than that. You're capable of such kindness, such empathy." Zaxxon nodded, his own eyes glistening with emotion. "I owe you my life, Craig," he said solemnly. "But more than that, you've opened my eyes to a different way of seeing the universe, of seeing your people." He paused, his gaze distant with memory. "I once saw a human soldier spare the life of a wounded Krillath warrior," he recounted. "The Krillath had just killed the soldier's comrade, but instead of seeking revenge, the human tended to his wounds. At the time, I saw it as weakness, but now I recognize it for what it was, an act of profound mercy and strength." As the gathering drew to a close, Craig presented Varys and Zaxxon with a small potted plant, its leaves a unique blend of Ventaxian silver and Terran green. "The botanists and I created this hybrid as a symbol of the bond between our people," he explained, his voice thick with emotion. "A reminder that even in the darkest of times, life finds a way to grow and flourish." Varys cradled the plant in her hands, tears slipping down her cheeks. In this tiny, fragile seedling, she saw a reflection of her own journey, of the way her life had become intertwined with Craig's and the other humans she had come to know and respect. As they left the Arboretum, Varys and Zaxxon knew that their lives had been irrevocably changed. They carried with them not just the physical reminder of their time on the Prometheus, but a newfound understanding of the power of compassion, of the bonds that could form across the vastness of space and the boundaries of species. And as they prepared to return to Ventaxia, they knew that they carried with them a message of hope, a vision of a future where humans and Ventaxians could stand together not as enemies, but as allies in the face of a hostile universe. As the moment of their departure drew near, Varys and Zaxxon found themselves sitting with Craig in the observation lounge, watching the ships come and go through the vast expanse of space. The three of them sat in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Varys spoke up, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Craig, I have to admit, I'm worried about going back to Ventaxia. I'm not sure how my superiors will react to everything I've learned here, about humans and about myself. What if they see my change in perspective as a betrayal of our species? What if they punish me for it?" Craig turned to her, his eyes filled with understanding. "Varys, I know exactly how you feel. When I first started advocating for greater cooperation between humans and other species, I faced a lot of criticism from my own people. They called me a traitor, a sympathizer. Some even accused me of putting alien lives above human ones." He leaned forward, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "But I knew in my heart that I was doing the right thing, that building bridges, fostering understanding, that was the only way forward. And I stayed true to that, even when it was hard." Zaxxon nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I want to do the same thing, Craig. I want to use my story, my experience here, to help bridge the gap between our species. I want to show my fellow warriors that humans are not our enemies, but potential allies against the Krelath." He paused, his gaze drifting out to the stars. "I also want to push for more cultural exchange between our peoples. I truly believe that the more we understand each other, the closer we'll be to achieving lasting peace." Craig's face lit up at this. "Zaxxon, that's a fantastic idea, and I want to help in any way I can. What if we set up a program where human medics and Ventaxian healers could train together, learn from each other's techniques, build relationships founded on mutual respect and trust?" Varys's eyes widened, a spark of excitement chasing away her earlier apprehension. "That would be incredible, Craig. A tangible way to continue what we've started here, with this unlikely friendship of ours." She reached out, grasping Zaxxon's hand in her own. "We can do this, Zaxxon, together. No matter what challenges we face, no matter what resistance we meet, we can be the change we wish to see." Zaxxon gripped her hand tightly, his resolve hardening. "You're right, Varys, we have to try, for the sake of our people, for the sake of the future. We have to try." As the three of them sat there, hands joined, eyes fixed on the infinite possibilities of space, they knew that their journey was only just beginning, that the road ahead would be long and fraught with difficulties. But they also knew with a certainty that came from the depths of their souls that it was a road worth traveling, for the sake of all they had learned, all they had gained, and all they still hoped to achieve. As their ship prepared for departure, Varys and Zaxxon stood with Craig in the docking bay. The human medic had become so much more than a healer to them over these past weeks. He was a true friend, a mentor, and a shining example of the potential for understanding between their species. "I can't thank you enough," Zaxxon said, his voice thick with emotion as he clasped Craig's hand, "not just for saving my life, but for everything you've shown us. The compassion, the selflessness, it's changed the way I see your people, the way I see the universe." Craig smiled, his eyes glistening. "It's been an honor, Zaxxon. You and Varys, you've taught me so much as well. About courage, about loyalty, about the power of an open mind and an open heart." Varys stepped forward, her own eyes brimming with tears. She opened her mouth to speak, to try to put into words the depth of her gratitude, her respect, her friendship. But before she could utter a word, an alarm blared through the station. Red lights flashed, and a voice crackled over the intercom. "Attention all personnel. A Krelath fleet has emerged from hyperspace. They are launching an attack on the station. This is not a drill." Craig's face paled. Already the distant sounds of explosions and screams could be heard. His comm badge chirped, and he glanced down at it, his expression grim. "The medical bay," he said. "They're already overwhelmed with casualties. I have to go." Varys and Zaxxon exchanged a look of helpless anguish. They knew there was nothing they could do, no way they could help. Their own ship was already prepped for launch, ready to carry them back to Ventaxia. Craig seemed to sense their conflict. He placed a hand on each of their shoulders, his grip firm and reassuring. "Go," he said. "Get to safety. Your people need you now more than ever." Zaxxon shook his head. "But the station—" "I'll be all right," Craig said, though they could all hear the uncertainty in his voice. "This is what I trained for. This is my duty." With a final squeeze of their shoulders, Craig turned and ran towards the fray, towards the chaos of the medical bay, towards the cries of the wounded and the dying. Varys and Zaxxon watched him go, their hearts heavy with a mixture of fear, admiration, and a wrenching sense of loss. They boarded their ship in silence, strapping into their seats as the engines hummed to life. As they pulled away from the station, they could see the flashes of weapon fire, the blooms of flames and debris as the battle raged on. Suddenly their comm system crackled to life. But it wasn't Craig's voice that greeted them. It was a stern, official-sounding Ventaxian speaking in clipped tones. "Varys Zaxxon, by order of the High Command, you are to return to Ventaxia immediately. Your extended stay on the human station has raised suspicions of treason. You will be debriefed and potentially face disciplinary action upon your return." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun. Varys and Zaxxon stared at each other in shock, a new kind of fear gripping their hearts. They had known, on some level, that their experiences on the human station would not be easily accepted by their own kind. But to be accused of treason, to face punishment for the very act of opening their minds and hearts, it was a blow they hadn't fully prepared for. For a long moment, they sat in heavy silence, the only sound the hum of the engines and the distant echoes of the battle behind them. Then, slowly, Varys reached out and took Zaxxon's hand. Zaxxon nodded, his jaw tight. "And we have to make them understand," he said. "We have to show them what we've learned, what we've seen. We have to fight for the kind of future that Craig and the others are fighting for back there." Varys squeezed his hand, a small, sad smile on her face. "It won't be easy," she said. "We'll face opposition, resistance. They'll call us traitors, fools, idealists." "Let them," Zaxxon said, a fire kindling in his eyes. "We know the truth, we've seen it, and we'll make them see it too, no matter how long it takes." As their ship hurtled through the stars, Varys and Zaxxon kept their hands clasped, drawing strength from each other. In their minds, they replayed the moments of connection, of understanding, of shared humanity they had experienced on the station. The laughter of the children in the corridors, the taste of foreign spices in the mess hall, the brush of Craig's hand as he guided them through physical therapy. These were the moments they would carry with them, the moments they would fight for. For they had seen, in the unlikeliest of places, the potential for a different kind of future. A future where compassion and curiosity could bridge the gap between species and cultures. A future that they now knew was worth any sacrifice. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.